Hi, everyone. I am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast, where anything can be possible because when you believe you can, you will. This series is all about getting honest with ourselves and noticing the things that we carry with us. We each have our own life experiences to go from, and sometimes it's hard to truly understand what it's like to be someone else. What we can do to create change is to start with us. If each of us took one action each day in our own lives, we could collectively change the world around us. But what does it take? It takes work, it takes practice, and we have to be honest with ourselves as we get there. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Sarah Acton, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Bill. She brings more than 25 years of experience in marketing and brand building work in both consumer and business markets. Prior to Bill, she led both marketing and sales at Athos, a wearable company in the athletic performance space. Sarah was also responsible for global brand oversight during pivotal periods of growth at LinkedIn and consumer marketing leadership at Yahoo. An entrepreneur at heart, Sarah was the owner of a small retail business where she had first-hand experience with the rewards and challenges of running a business. Sarah holds an MBA from Northwestern University and Kellogg School of Management and a BS in marketing from Tulane University. During this episode, we learned all about Sarah's background of how the mix of having a mother that was curious and a father that was a small business owner gave Sarah lessons that she still uses today in her work and her personal life. Learning to nurture those around her by being curious and caring, while getting in tune with the resilience and grit of a small business owner when needed, when things don't go as planned, but giving yourself grace and knowing that you have within you the power to turn things around. This episode is sponsored by Bill. Bill is a leader in financial automation software for small and mid-sized businesses. They're dedicated to automating the future of finance so business can thrive. Hundreds of thousands of businesses trust Bill solutions to manage financial workflows, including payables, receivables, and spend and expense management. To learn more about Bill and their accounting partner program, please visit bill.com/for-accountants. I want to thank Bill for sponsoring this episode and supporting the work that we do at the B3 Method Institute. I personally have been involved with Bill as a customer as well as a supporter of the work that they've done to automate tasks so that we can spend more time with our clients and nurture those human relationships. I think you're going to learn so many great takeaways from this interview. I'm excited for you to learn it. And also, if you find this episode helpful to you, please share it with your friend. Definitely review our podcast and subscribe on any podcast channel that you listen to. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs. And today I'm here with Sarah Acton from Bill. Sarah, so glad you could join me. You want to just give a little bit of background on what you do at Bill before we get started?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. Super excited for our conversation. So, I am Chief Marketing Officer at Bill, and I have been with the company for about 2 years. And really, as a Chief Marketing Officer, my job is to help the world discover who we are and how we can help small businesses and accountants really solve their problems and bring that message of financial automation to the world.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I've been a longtime fan of Bill, so happy to have you here. And, what this is really about is just to kind of understand you and how you got to be where you are today and belief systems that aligned and didn't align as you went through your life and as a leader. So just to begin, where did you grow up and what were your parents' occupations?
So I was born in a suburb of Chicago, but when I was four, we moved to Miami, Florida.
Oh, okay.
And as the story goes, my dad, who was an intellectual property attorney, got tired of the winters and he said, "Where can I go where there aren't very many people who do what I do?" So, like,
Mm,
the market opportunity was ripe,
yeah.
and Miami was the place. So I grew up in Miami, and my dad was an intellectual property attorney, had his own firm, so he was a small business owner, um,
Mm,
which we can talk about.
yeah.
And then my mom, for a while, she stayed home with us, and then she went back to work and was an executive assistant for several CEOs at startups, actually, which gave me a window into the world of
Mm,
technology.
yes. So are you still in Florida or have you moved since?
No, we came strange turn of events. We wound our way, and when I say we, my mom and my two sisters, we all made our way out to California. So we went from one ocean to another ocean, uh, through different twists and turns. But we're a pretty tight family, and so we wanted to be together. So my mom and my older sister are 10 minutes away from me, and my younger
Oh,
sister's
nice.
about 45. So,
Yeah, very nice. So, so going back to being in Miami, so you had two sisters then. Are you the oldest or what, where are you in the,
I am in the middle.
okay.
I am in the middle all of the like middle child ways.
It's all true.
Yeah, yeah, it's all true. It's all true.
Yeah.
Maybe not all of it, but a
Yeah,
lot
a
of it.
little
A
bit.
lot of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Okay. So, so what did you do for fun when you were little? Like where did you spend your time?
Yeah. So from when I was very young, I've always been very active. My mom will be the first person to tell you, and now my husband will tell you, I don't sit down for very long. And so I've always been really active, and I found my way to dance very young.
Okay.
And so I danced all through, um, you know, elementary school, high school, even in college. And I spent a lot of time. And I think, there was obviously like the creative and the physical component of that, but I was always on dance teams. And
Hmm.
that was really one of my first leadership positions.
Okay.
And it taught me a lot. Yeah, it taught me there's a lot of lessons
Yeah.
I got from that.
Yeah. So, it's not easy. I'm guessing they were all girls
Yeah. So
to get
leading,
get
yeah,
all girls to agree and get along sometimes. So how did you go about doing that?
yeah, you don't realize it at the time, but
Uh-huh.
there were some real lessons in EQ
Hmm.
that I learned early. So we were a nationally competitive dance team in high school. Um, and we had, when I was leading the team, we had a squad of uh, almost 70 girls.
Oh, wow.
Um, and so, good sized.
Hmm.
And so there were the components around um, learning how to lead a team, how to um, uh, both be equal parts listener,
Hmm.
to understand how to resolve conflict or how to motivate, um, and then also be sometimes the one who has to say like, no, this is what we're doing, and
Yeah.
we're all going to get on board.
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, so many opportunities to start pretty early to figure out who I wanted to be as a leader.
Yeah. So what did you learn? What was maybe one of your biggest struggles that comes to mind that taught you something that you bring into today?
Yeah. Um, there is no one size fits all for
Hmm.
motivation.
Hmm.
And I think it's true in the professional world, like we're all motivated by different things. And part of your job as a leader is to tap into what really motivates any one individual and even as a team, right? Like there's
Mhm.
kind of individual motivations, there are team motivations. So that's one. I'm going to add one more though.
Yeah.
Um, uh, it definitely, so so quick story, my senior year, I got injured um,
Mm.
right before nationals, like
Oh.
a week before nationals.
Oh no.
And that was a lesson for me, certainly, like in resilience. Um,
Hmm.
I had to figure out, that the team still, needed, um, and so sort of separating, myself from and what I was going through from, how to make sure that the team was successful and the resilience of coming back from injury, and it's just it's a good lesson.
Yeah, yeah. And it not being about you, it's how you serve others.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing in leadership is, how can I help versus how is this about me? Even though something like that, you've waited all those years for that moment for your senior year to be where you are and just separating the emotion from
Mhm.
that. So how'd you still show up with a smile?
You know, this is a lesson or language that I learned later on in life. Actually, credit to my yoga teacher. But one of the things that, I have tried to live by is you can't control circumstances, but you can control how you react to those circumstances.
Hmm.
And I believe that challenges in life, when you bring positivity, when you bring a framework of, you know, everything is solvable, like we can work our way through this,
Right.
you can oftentimes manifest that.
Yeah. So let's go back to your dad. So your dad moves to a state that I'm guessing he didn't have many connections in if he was just going for weather. Um, so what did you see with him starting up a business and what was your life like with your dad being an attorney? And I'm sure he was working long hours to get that going.
Yeah. And it's funny when you ask the question about like where I spent my time.
Mm-hmm.
I also spent a lot of time in his office.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would be in his office, later when I was in high school. I would work there in the summers. But I spent a lot of time in his office. And in the beginning, he, was still had clients in Chicago. And so there was some, back and forth and some travel. But I think what and there were ups and downs in his business. Like I
Yeah.
remember years where you would, when he didn't think I was listening,
Mm-hmm.
you'd hear the conversations, honestly, with his accountant, which was one of his trusted
Yeah.
advisors. Um, and so I watched that, combination of him wanting to create a practice that reflected him and his
Mm-hmm.
beliefs and how he thought the profession could serve customers, serve the community, but also real, challenges in that. Not all the years were great, and
Mm-hmm.
for every, you know, for every client that was fantastic, there were others that were challenges.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's so true. Professional services or any business. And I think this is comes to a real important thing around personal purpose and really holding true to why you're in business. And this is sometimes why people get so strung out with their business because they're not staying focused to why they went into business. And that's actually a harder choice because to turn down business
Mhm.
or to walk away from business that doesn't align to the work you want to be doing is a really hard thing as a business owner because you're supporting your family or whoever invested in you or whatever that is. Those are really hard choices to make. So what were some of the choices that you saw him make?
There were a couple of clients that I can remember. So there was a one, long-standing client,
Mhm.
and every once in a while I would hear my dad complain about they had a very like, gosh, almost like a familial relationship.
Yeah, yeah,
Like they
yeah.
would push on each other, but it
Yeah.
was part of what made it work. And I
Yeah.
remember one time when I was young, I was like, "Well, why do you work with him?" And he's
Right.
and he articulated to me, he's like, "Sarah, he has vision. He is motivated by solving real problems for
Hmm.
customers, and I think I can really help. Like I can see how I can help." And I was like, "Okay, I get that." Um, and then I remember other times where there were customer or clients that my dad made the choice to part ways with, and oftentimes it was because the what they were looking for wasn't what motivated, like
Hmm.
what my dad got into business to do. And so I think there is, to use your language, that like values alignment. um
Hmm.
when you get there, amazing things can happen. uh
Yeah.
but it's not always perfect.
Right. Yeah. And when, like just using that example of the client that he was motivated by, even though it was a struggle, he's learning from
Hmm.
it, and so I think there's something when you're growing from something and still benefiting and feeling like you can, help achieve their mission, then there's bigger purpose in the work that you do. So how did that start shaping some of the things that you were thinking about for yourself? Did you want to be an attorney when you were younger?
I didn't. My old
Okay.
we do have some in the family.
Uh-huh.
I And it's funny, I didn't see the creativity in the
Hmm.
work that he did until much later. Much
Yeah.
later, I was like, "Oh, there's actually a ton of creativity." And
Hmm.
so I was actually drawn to marketing very early in my
Okay.
career. Specifically, and again, my mom will tell you stories of I would run around the house and sing jingles from commercials, and was fascinated by the idea. And I think part of this goes back to my dad, of the intersection between what is that thing that you're creating that solves a
Hmm.
real problem, and how do you tell the world about it? How
Yeah.
do you help the world see the solution to the problem? And so I think it was in a tangent. It was definitely inspired by my dad's work, but I found my path through um, the communication side of it.
Yeah. So what did you learn from watching your mom?
My mom is one of the most curious people. She's
Hmm.
a voracious reader, voracious. I cannot play Scrabble with her because it is just like, yeah, she to this day will come up with words, and I'm like, that's not a word. And sure enough, it's a word. Um, and so my mom, was always incredibly curious, and
Mhm.
had a way of connecting concepts for us
Mhm.
as kids and even as adults,
Mhm.
where she would be able to articulate or explain. We This may sound strange, but we often talked about economics uh,
Mhm.
at the table, because she had economics in university and post grad, and so we'd talk about economics and how it influences communities. And so I think from her, really, that curiosity, like seek to understand
Mhm.
before passing judgment. She was
Mhm.
very much we would come in with something and she'd be like, "Well, why?
Yeah.
Have you thought about it from their perspective?"
Mhm.
And that was really important,
Mhm.
a really important life lesson.
So I'm assuming, are your parents divorced or? Is
They
that
are they are divorced.
yeah.
My dad has passed. My mom
Oh, okay.
is still with us. But um they at different stages, we came out to California with my mom. My dad came later.
Oh,
So
okay.
for a while we were all out here. But yeah, they divorced. I was 8, 9.
Oh, okay. Wow. So was it normal for you, or did you remember that time in your life of figuring out the survival skills of that change?
It definitely kind of going back to these lessons of EQ at that you don't really realize at that age kind of what I mean, you know what's happening, like someone's told
Yeah.
you the words, um,
Yes.
but you don't and I had friends, so I was like, "Oh, is it gonna be like, Julie's situation? Is it gonna be like Emily's situation?" And the
Yeah.
reality is every family dynamic, as you know, is different. And
Hmm.
so, a lot of it was navigating, um, and a lot of it was creating the space to ask questions.
Hmm.
So I think as kids, actually as humans, um, I think there's a lot that, the power of inquisition, the power of curiosity, the power of seeking to understand, um,
Hmm.
can be fuel through any emotionally charged situation.
Hmm. Well, and I think it's so important, whatever age, and this is, whether you're leading an organization or young, but giving that space to ask the questions also provides healing or understanding, because in the absence of no communication, people decide themselves what the
100.
issue is, right?
Mhm. 100%.
So was that something, or I'm guessing with your mom's curiosity, was that something that she opened up for you during that time?
Absolutely. I know it's a cliched phrase, but that, no question is a bad question, no question is a stupid question, that was something that it was drilled into us very early on. And so I think, and there weren't guardrails to that. It
No
Especially with
rules.
my mom. Yeah,
Hmm.
like there nothing was off limits. Um
Hmm.
and so I think that, and there's security and safety in that,
Right.
that you can ask anything. I may not have an answer, she may not have an answer, but the question is always a good question.
Yeah, which I think also in organizations, sometimes this is where it goes wrong, is when there's no communication or allowing people to ask questions. Then they start thinking, is this company going to get shut down? Are we going to get bought out? Or, all the rumors start without just opening the door as a leader and not keeping everything behind a closed door, because it's usually not as interesting as people think.
100%. And it's such a good, um, I think sometimes we think about communication as, um, or mistakenly, you can think about communication as a one-way door,
Hmm.
when oftentimes the door that comes back is really where there is incredible insight. And I think having people around you, especially as a leader, having people around you who will ask the hard question, who will
Hmm.
ask the tricky question,
Yeah.
that there's such power in that. And you're 100% right. Like filling in, what is that saying, chaos loves a vacuum? Like the oftentimes as leaders, the or at least for me, the things I hear when I hear things, it's like, oh no, like, don't waste emotional energy on that, that's not a thing. um,
Right.
but you need that feedback loop to be able to
You
address
don't even
it.
know what's going on inside someone's head, right?
Yeah.
If you don't open the conversation. So, with that, so if you moved to California when you were 8, you said?
No, so we stayed in Florida. I moved to California after graduate school, so
Oh, okay.
I've been here over 20 years.
Okay. So what was your plans? Did you initially go to college for marketing, or what did you initially go for?
I did actually. I
Okay.
am one of
Wow.
those um, rare or weird or I
Uh-huh.
don't know. But I went to college to study business and
Mhm.
with a degree in marketing. Um, I came after school and started working in the agency world to get my feet wet. I hadn't planned to come out to California, but my when I was in graduate school, my mom had a heart attack,
Oh,
and
wow.
she's all good. But
Yeah,
it's one of those moments that like, do I really want to be away from my family, or
right.
do I want to figure out a way to get back there? And so it was that was a turning point.
Yeah. So with that, so you've had like a number of things up until that point that you had to get through, to find that resilience through moving to Florida from Chicago, your dad having a business, learning about that, your mom now having a heart attack. So, what did you find inside of yourself to be able to still focus on what was important to you, but be able to balance all of those things and not get taken back by all of this?
Yeah. It's a great question. I I do very much believe that there is a lot of what happens in our lives that we have more control over than
Hmm.
sometimes we think. And so
Hmm.
I think for me, um, learning, and it's evolved, but learning early what are the things in my life or the relationships in my life that give me energy,
Hmm.
that are sort of energy um, batteries,
Yeah.
uh, and then how can I? You can't limit all of the things that are energy detractors, but how can I limit their um, impact on me and try and make sure that I'm checking in with myself honestly about the balance. And
Hmm.
there are times, even today, like in today's world, there are times where I'm like, okay, I have got to go to a yoga class. Like
Yes.
my battery is draining. I need to go, I need to find some time. And so knowing what adds, what detracts, and then trying to be conscious of managing them before you get
Mhm.
into a place where, you're really on empty.
Yeah. So I think, so in yoga, we call that equilibrium, that you're, trying to figure out what you can do to bring yourself back into balance, right? And it's having that inner awareness of when you're off, because I think a lot of times many of us can go through life and just anytime emotions or feelings pop up, we push them down. And we still have to show up each day. Still have to show up to work. We have to show up in our family, with our friends. And it is important to figure out like what we need to do for ourselves, to bring that back in balance. How do you think that you learned that skill for yourself, and why?
It's a great question. And I don't know. I mean, maybe there's part of it that goes back to, um, having to navigate my parents getting divorced.
Hmm.
Like there were lots of ups and downs in that.
Hmm.
And I think that was probably a kickstart for thinking about, and I would find myself, even at home, when I was little, I would like go off and dance for a little while. And,
Hmm.
or I'd like, okay, I'm, one of those people that like, I think I was a sunflower in a former life, like sunshine on my face, like, uh, and so I think it started in a
Hmm.
very not a
Natural.
cognitive way. Yeah, a very
Uh-huh.
natural way. And as I got older, um, and would read or talk to other people that I admired, or other people in the family, like the idea, and other people who'd gone through struggles, like my dad, his business went up and down, but there are lots of the we had a neighbor across the street who owned a small business, and their business went up and down. And so, like, seeing other people navigate challenges and
Hmm.
talking to them about, like, how do you do it, how do you still show up with positivity. And so I think it started very organically, but
Hmm.
now I'm I would say more mindful about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you've got a mix. I mean, from my observation is like your mom taught you how to ask those questions,
Yeah.
right? So like instead of just watching your dad go through those up and downs or hearing his story or listening to his conversation with his accountant, you actually asked the question of why.
Hmm.
Um, and then you saw your dad come out okay, right? Like
Hmm.
they're business owners, it's just, and me being one, such a hard, you do it because you believe in something or you really want to go after a passion, but there's so many ups and downs in a business. And when you see how someone navigates that, like you said, in a way of like, we're going to be fine, we just got to move forward, we got to step back and brainstorm, whatever that is, you were learning that process by questioning and then taking in the lessons yourself. So how do you think that started helping you as you started getting in your own career?
Great question, and very astute observation. I think for me, and I would have these conversations definitely with my mom. We would talk about, hey, I think I'm going to, do this thing, or this thing is happening at work, or and she was very much would ask really smart probing questions,
Hmm.
because obviously she knew me so well, but she could also sort of see where I was struggling with something.
Hmm.
And so that self-reflection on both, what do I need right now, but also how can I, like, who am I and how can I serve? And I
Hmm.
think one of the things it took me a while in my career to realize is, what you'd have conversations about a project, a job, whatever. And it's like, that's amazing, but I'm not the best person for that. And that's
Right.
okay. That's it's kind of
Yeah.
like not every client is, and being able to say, I'm really good at these things, and these are the things that give me energy, and um, being able to tune into that to help
Hmm.
guide my career, I think has been um, one of those things that I definitely give my mom a lot of credit for.
Yeah. Well, I would also think too, because I mean, there's two things there. Is one, I think, again, going down the communication path, a lot of people come to you with their problems a lot of times, but they don't really want you to solve it. So what your mom was asking you was to find the solve inside,
Hmm.
because she might have had an answer, but you might have not taken it if she
Hmm.
had just given you the answer. And you find that a lot with people, as you grow in your career as well, that they come to complain about something or they're frustrated about something, but they really don't want you to answer it yourself. And then secondly, this aspect of still having confidence and knowing you don't have to do everything,
Hmm.
is part of your dance team, right? Like you have to figure out who can do which skills the best, but in collective, you're a national champion, right? Like, but as an individual, like on your own, that maybe that wouldn't have been the case. Like you needed the other people to get you there, or when you're injured, who could step up for you.
Hmm. 100%. And I think the the idea of how all the puzzle pieces fit together,
Hmm.
and how it's not complete without them. And part, like, I think part of our job as or not job, like part of the opportunity that we have as leaders
Hmm.
is helping teams understand, how every piece like is required to get to the end output. And one of the most rewarding things is watching a team achieve something together, and like
Hmm.
the pure sort of joy that comes from that sense of accomplishment, especially on things that are challenging, where
Right.
they have to, work through some, they have to find some grit. That's such a rewarding part of what I get to do.
Yes. So were you in the accounting profession prior to Bill and the small business world?
I was
Yeah.
not, but one of the things along my career path was I was a small business owner. I owned a retail
Hmm.
store for about three and
Okay.
a half years. And my story is I was, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 months into the store, and there was a woman who owned a scrapbooking store close by. And I was like, she looks like she's killing it. Like, what is she doing? So I would pick her brain. And I remember one day I went over there and I was like, do you have an accountant? I need an accountant. Like, and she was like, yes, I have a referral for you.
Yeah.
Um, and so I learned that really, yes, I watched my dad, and I think that was part of it. I
Hmm.
remembered, um, but I have amazing, respect and admiration and some empathy for sure, to just how important, and how sometimes they're not easy. Both of
Yeah.
those professions are.
Yeah, exactly. So what things have you learned since being at Bill, as far as the journey of small business owners and accountants between your experience and just observing the customers there in order to be able to help them and serve them? Because we've got to, this is always the balance, right? In
Mhm.
businesses, serving internally and serving externally. So what have been your observations in this role?
Yeah, there are a lot of observations that have rung true for
Hmm.
decades.
Yes.
That small businesses, like, they are incredibly resilient.
Hmm.
Um, they are very passionate about the work that they do, and I think that there is a trust between, as I talk to firms and customers of accounting firms, like, there is a trust there that is foundational.
Hmm.
When you're talking about small business owners and, the lifeblood of their business, like, there has to be a deep sense of trust. And I think that the circumstances evolve, right? Like, people
Yeah.
went through COVID, people went through, whatever's happening. And so the dynamics change, but the the resiliency that it takes to start a practice, to start a company, to run a company, to run a practice, the trusted relationships and communities that are fuel, right? Like those battery
Hmm.
rechargers. Watching, I was at the digital CPA conference last month, and what a sense of community. And I think that's not a new thing.
No.
That goes back a long, long time. Um, but seeing people get their batteries recharged by that sense of community, like, it's super inspiring.
Yeah. Well, and I think, with automation, that's the whole purpose of it is to surface more community, more human connection, rather than take it away. It's when we can take away some of the tasks that take us away from the relationship, that's what is so important. So, so many great stories you shared. I'd like to close with some rapid fire questions. So you can pick a category. which is family, health, spiritual, or money.
Let's do health.
Okay. So things or actions I don't have that I want with my health.
I am working on sleeping more.
Okay. So what are you
And
doing with that?
it it is and I actually shared it with the company in a company meeting recently because
Yeah.
the public accountability.
Yeah.
I am being more because I've figured out it is one of those things that's a battery recharger. It is for
Yeah.
any human, like any being, but for
Hmm.
me specifically. And so trying to be more protective of
Hmm.
the control that I have
Yeah.
over making sure that I get the rest I need.
Yes. Love it. All right. So things or actions I do have that I want to keep with my health.
I would say my yoga practice.
Yeah.
Uh, it's been a constant source, battery recharging, and I've tried lots of things, but it occupies a space for me that is really unique and I find
Mhm.
incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I agree. Things or actions that I don't have that I don't want to have as far as my health.
I'm still working on this,
Yeah.
but criticism,
Uh-huh.
self-criticism,
Yeah.
um,
Negative
I
self-talk.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. A work in progress. I am a work in progress. We
Yeah.
all are. But the negative voice is something I'm working on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think so many of us have that. We just have to, it comes back to awareness and bring ourselves back to equilibrium, right?
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, awesome. So is there anything that we didn't cover today or that you want people to walk away with from this conversation before we close?
One of the things I think a lot about and through conversations um, with customers, with folks at the company, with peers, I think finding moments to give ourselves a little grace
Mm-hmm.
when things don't go exactly the way that we planned. I
Mm-hmm.
think finding the moments to give ourselves a little grace, I think is often a key to reversing, or not reversing, but a key to being able to see the path forward. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just something I think a lot about and as you commented, people maybe are coming and they're not looking for answers, but maybe just a moment of grace to give
Yeah.
themselves the room to figure out the answer on their own.
Yeah, love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think there's so many things for people to walk away with. And just again, I appreciate all that Bill does for the accountant community, but also small businesses in general. So thank you for coming on today.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And now for my mindful moments of this interview that I had with Sarah. And I think there were so many great takeaways in her story of what she learned from her parents, from the trials and tribulations that she had, and also the accomplishments that she had as well. We talked about both of her parents and definitely what she took away from each one. The first one being her father, that had moved from Chicago to Miami to open up his law office there on intellectual property. And her working in his office and just observing how he made decisions, how he worked with clients, and what was really important to him. And I think this is an important thing that we often get away from when we're in business is we forget why. Why are we there every day? What is the value that we are trying to create? And the problem is when we go off of our purpose and we get distracted or we start making decisions to take business that isn't aligned with that purpose, what happens is we find less and less interest in the things that we're doing. We might feel that feeling of being burnt out or run down. And what makes this so good to get back to your purpose is you find that energy again. And we talked a lot about just observing what our energy is and how do we get our energy back to equilibrium. So the only person that can do that is you. And in order for us to do that, we have to go internal. We have to give ourselves space. We have to give ourselves stillness in order to better connect with what is going on inside of us and realizing when we diverge off of what's important to us. The other thing that we talked about was her mom, and her mom being a very curious person, asking a lot of questions and really teaching her from a young age to look within to find those answers. We all can give an answer to somebody, but it may not resonate with them because it's not the way that they think or feel. It is the way that we solve something in our life, but it isn't necessarily the way that all people solve things, because each of us walk in our own shoes, have our own experiences, have our own background, and we really all make decisions based on what that journey has been and what we're used to. And so it's important that when we are going through these decision processes or we're trying to solve something in our life, that we do question ourselves and we give ourselves space to understand why we're even feeling the way that we are. And sometimes when we give ourselves that space and that stillness, we can be really surprised by what we uncover about ourselves and what is missing and where we need to fill those gaps in our life. And one of the things that Sarah talked about was just, in the times where things were hard, like how did she get the resilience to recover from those tough times? And it's really learning these lessons. But one of the things internally to her is that she is a high energy person. So if she is feeling like her energy is low or feeling depleted, she knows that she's got to do something to bring her energy back into balance and also understand what is detracting from her energy, because her natural state is not to be like that. So when we are aware of what our natural state is, then when we get more awareness of what is going on for ourselves and we give ourselves space to really ask those hard questions, then it's really important that we figure out what are the things that could bring us back in balance. What are those things that we could remove that is taking away our energy? And one of the things that she talked about, her mom asking certain questions, and I think this is really important, it's when we give ourselves stillness, is doing that self-reflection and asking ourselves, what do I need right now? So what I need right now is not necessarily what I needed yesterday, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. We shift all of the time in transition and don't even realize that. So it's important that we get to who we are, what is our purpose, and what do I need to do right now to shift something? And how can I serve? So we don't always want to be so self-focused that we're not thinking about how to serve others around us. That might be our family members, that might be people that we work with, that might be our community, whatever that is defined as for you. But how can we do that? Because when we serve others, we actually get energy from that as well. And so it is important to understand that if we want to be resilient, if we want to be able to go through the ups and downs and come out on top, how do we do that? Well, we've got to be passionate about the things that we do. And we also have to communicate and be curious about ourselves and the people around us. And we've got to understand internally for ourselves, where are we off? What is our energy? And what can we do to shift that? I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I know I did. There was some great stories and takeaways that Sarah shared. And I always appreciate the vulnerability of the people that are guests on the show, that tell their story, because that's never easy. It's not something we normally do. And we often don't think about ourselves during the day, that we're just letting the day happen to us. So for all of my guests and Sarah that have been vulnerable, I really, really appreciate it. And it helps us all when we show that transparency with the people around us. I hope you also enjoyed this episode. Again, if it resonated with you, please share it with those around you. Subscribe to the podcast, give it a review as well. And as a reminder, this podcast was sponsored by Bill, who is a leader in financial automation software for small and mid-sized businesses, dedicated to automating the future of finance so businesses can thrive. Hundreds of thousands of businesses trust Bill solutions to manage financial workflows, including payables, receivables, spend, and expense management. To learn more about Bill and their accountant partner program, please visit bill.com/4accountants, FOR accountants. I want to thank all of you that listen into this podcast. Your support means so much to us. It gives us the energy to keep living in our purpose and sharing more with you, and just remembering the energy that we create is the energy we create for those around us. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more, so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.